The town of Silent Hollow was perpetually draped in an ethereal fog. It clung to the gnarled branches of ancient trees and swirled around the dilapidated Victorian houses. An unsettling silence pervaded the air, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant cry of crows. At the edge of town, shrouded in mist and shadowed by a towering oak, stood an abandoned phone booth. Its glass panes were cracked, and the receiver dangled precariously, swaying rhythmically in the wind like a pendulum counting down the seconds to some unknown doom. The phone booth was more than just a relic of a bygone era. It was a spectre of fear, whispered about in hushed tones by the townsfolk. Legend had it that the phone booth was a conduit, a portal through which spirits could communicate with the mortal realm. Most dismissed it as mere folklore, a ghost story to frighten children and fuel the town's eerie reputation. But some, their faces etched with fear and resignation, knew the truth. The phone booth was a gateway, and sometimes the dead did call.
Eli, a young writer seeking solace and inspiration in the quietude of Silent Hollow, scoffed at the local tales. He had moved to the secluded town seeking a change of pace, a break from the cacophony of city life. The stories about the haunted phone booth seemed like nothing more than the product of overactive imaginations. He was a man of logic and reason, and he refused to entertain such superstitious nonsense. Yet the phone booth, with its air of melancholy and decay, intrigued him. It stood as a stark contrast to the digital age, a forgotten sentinel of a time when communication was more personal, more tangible. The more Eli heard the whispers and witnessed the fearful glances towards the phone booth, the more his curiosity grew. He decided to investigate, to debunk the myth, and perhaps find inspiration for his writing.
Driven by a mixture of curiosity and skepticism, Eli found himself drawn to the phone booth late one night. The fog was at its thickest, swirling around him like a ghostly shroud. The air was heavy with moisture and the scent of damp earth. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of his own footsteps. As he reached the phone booth, a chill ran down his spine. The air grew colder, and he felt a presence unseen but palpable. He paused, his hand hovering over the receiver. A sudden gust of wind rattled the booth, and the phone began to ring. The shrill, insistent ring pierced the silence, echoing through the empty streets. Eli hesitated for a moment, his heart pounding in his chest. Then, unable to resist the pull of the unknown, he picked up the receiver.
Hello?
Eli.
The blood drained from Eli's face. He recognized the voice instantly, a voice he thought he would never hear again. It was his mother, her voice laced with a haunting sorrow, a desperate plea echoing from beyond the grave.
Mom, is that really you?
Eli, I need your help.
Eli stumbled back from the phone booth, his heart pounding in his chest. The receiver slipped from his grasp, dangling precariously as the dial tone buzzed in his ear. His mind raced, trying to rationalize the impossible.
My mother? She's been dead for 5 years. It couldn't have been her voice. It had to be a prank, a cruel trick of my imagination.
But deep down, a part of him knew the truth. He recognized his mother's voice, the way she used his name, the inflection of her words. The phone call had shaken him to his core, dredging up a maelstrom of emotions he thought he had buried long ago. Grief, guilt, and a terrifying sense of dread. He had dismissed the stories of the haunted phone booth as mere superstition. But now, faced with the undeniable evidence of his own senses, he was forced to confront the chilling reality. The dead could reach out from beyond the grave, and they had chosen him. Days turned into nights, and the memory of the phone call continued to haunt Eli. He tried to convince himself it was a hallucination, a trick of the mind brought on by stress and the isolation of Silent Hollow. He buried himself in his writing, seeking solace in the world of fiction. But the words felt hollow, meaningless. The phone booth, shrouded in mist and draped in shadows, loomed large in his mind, a constant reminder of the supernatural encounter.
I need to find answers. I can't keep living like this, not knowing.
Driven by a need for answers, for some semblance of normalcy in a world suddenly turned upside down, Eli began to research the history of Silent Hollow. He delved into local archives, poring over dusty tomes and faded newspaper clippings, searching for any mention of the phone booth, for any explanation for the haunting calls. He learned of a tragic accident that had occurred near the phone booth decades ago, a young woman killed instantly when her car swerved off the road and crashed into the oak tree. The townsfolk whispered that her spirit, unable to find peace, remained tethered to the phone booth, reaching out to unsuspecting souls, seeking help or perhaps revenge. Eli's sleep was plagued by nightmares, vivid and unsettling dreams where the phone booth featured prominently. He would wake up in a cold sweat, his heart racing, the echo of his mother's voice ringing in his ears.
The line between reality and nightmare blurred, and I found myself drawn back to the phone booth, compelled by an unseen force. I knew I should stay away, that the phone booth held nothing but terror and despair, yet I couldn't resist its pull. It was as if the phone booth had a hold over me, whispering promises of answers, of closure, of a chance to speak to my mother one last time. I knew it was a dangerous game I was playing, but I felt powerless to resist.
As Eli delved deeper into the history of Silent Hollow, he uncovered a pattern, a dark secret that the town had tried to bury. The phone booth wasn't just haunted by one spirit, but by many. Over the years, countless souls had met their demise in accidents and unexplained circumstances near the phone booth. Their spirits, unable to move on, remained trapped, drawn to the phone booth like moths to a flame. The phone booth had become a repository of lost souls, a beacon of despair and desperation. And Eli, whether by choice or by some cruel twist of fate, had become entangled in its web of sorrow. He realized with a growing sense of dread that the phone booth wasn't just a conduit for communication, but a trap, a vortex that drew the living into the realm of the dead. The phone rang again, late one night, the shrill ring echoing through Eli's empty house. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, who was calling.
Eli, please, you must return to the phone booth. Help me find peace.
I knew it was a trap, that the phone booth held nothing but darkness and oblivion. Yet I felt an irresistible pull, a need to answer the call, to face my fears, to find closure.
He grabbed his jacket and stepped out into the night. The fog was thick, swirling around him like a shroud, guiding him towards his destiny. The next morning, the townsfolk of Silent Hollow found Eli's house empty. His belongings were untouched, his writing desk covered in scattered papers. The only sign that he had ever existed was a single page left in his typewriter, the words typed in a frantic, desperate scrawl. The phone booth, it's real. My mother, she needs me. Eli was never seen again. Some whispered that he had succumbed to madness, driven insane by the haunting calls. Others believed that he had been claimed by the phone booth, his soul dragged down into the abyss along with the countless others who had dared to answer its call. The truth, like the phone booth itself, remained shrouded in mystery, a chilling reminder that some secrets are best left buried, and some calls are best left unanswered. The curse of the phone booth lived on, a spectre of fear that would forever haunt the fog-laden streets of Silent Hollow.